Hello everybody, welcome to the Coaching Conversation. I'm Graham Wiley and I've been coaching business leaders for the last 2 decades. In this series we're going to explore some of the things I've seen and learned in that 2 decades and hopefully help you see how you can become more focused, more effective and hopefully happier in your life. So it's now time to sit back, relax and enjoy the Coaching Conversation. Hello everybody and welcome to this very seasonal edition of the Coaching Conversation. As you can see, the Coaching Conversation studio is fully made up for the festivities and we're all good to go. And for this edition, I'm really pleased to welcome my friend Jed Hassid to talk through what we found 2021 to have been. So without any more ado, can I just invite Jed to tell the audience a bit about himself and his work and the clients that he works with.
Well, morning, Graham, and seasonal festive greetings to everybody, one and all. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. I am an executive coach. I work with high growth business leaders, basically to help them establish their vision for their companies and ultimately to help them achieve that vision. Many and varied clients have I worked with, from professional service organisations through to undertakers and theme parks. So many and varied.
Wow.
Yes. Never let it be said that I specialise in any particular service area. Manufacturing, not so much, but service areas.
I want to know you get a referral from an undertaker to a theme park or the other way round. Anyway, moving on.
We don't have long enough actually, Graham, but I'll tell you one time.
This edition really is a reflection on 2021 and it can't be anything other than the most extraordinary business year in living memory, can it? Yeah. It's the confluence of 3 enormous events in 1 year all at the same time. So clearly we've had the backdrop of the pandemic. Brexit's effect is really beginning to take some kind of impact on everybody. Yeah. And then towards the end of the year, all of our consciences got pricked with COP26 and the importance of the environment and our roles as business leaders in that challenge has all come to the fore. And clearly setting the scene for that just to get more and more so as we go forward. So 2021 has been one of the most challenging years for our clients. And what are the sorts of things that you found with your clients? What are the challenges they've faced?
Okay. As you say, I think that there have been a number, but one of the things that I've reflected on that our clients have been challenged with has been this working from home piece. Now, at one level, there was absolutely no alternative because one of my clients could not open, full stop. So 0 income. And what could he do to try and get at least some cash into the cash register? And he was quite innovative and creative in what he decided to do. And he was able to generate at least some cash through encouraging his colleagues to work from home. Yes, there was some furlough, but it was this level of creativity. And so what struck me most was I did a poll amongst some clients. They were in the professional service area, and I asked about 75 people whether working from home had a positive, neutral or negative impact. And it really surprised me that only 9% of those 75 said it had a negative impact on their business. So that suggests to me that yes, working from home has its challenges, and I'm sure we may well touch on them a bit later on. But actually, for people who realise that they can do things differently in their organisation, that there are other ways to operate than the ways that they have always operated, then they can still be successful. And that negative 9% really surprised me. And profits have flown as a consequence. Now, I'm not for one moment suggesting that what we need is a good pandemic, far from it, but by the same token, it does demonstrate that if you've got a really strong management team that are able to think differently, to say, okay, then this is a challenge, let's make it into an opportunity, that is absolutely critical to be able to cope with pretty much whatever life and business throws at us, which of course can be many and varied.
Yeah, the thing, isn't it? The effect of the pandemic is really testing everybody, in the sense that it's happened, it's immovable, you can't change it as an individual business or a business leader. You've just got to deal with the fallout and the consequences as it directly impacts you. And working from home was one aspect. Another aspect is that, combined with Brexit, it's created a very large hole in the workforce. Potentially 1 million people have left the UK workforce in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
Have any of your clients been struggling with finding talent, keeping talent?
Oh, absolutely. From pretty much across the board. The leisure business that I referred to a few moments ago, it has a core of full-time employees, and then its numbers swell to pretty much 4 or 5 times the full-time number when they open. And getting people to come and work on a seasonal basis has been horrendous for that particular business. Again, the ability to adapt, the ability to think about, well, what is it that would attract somebody to working for us has come to the fore. And this idea about, we're quite familiar with having being able to answer to prospective customers, clients, why should you buy from us? But if we put it on its head, the business then had to say, well, why should an employee come and work with us? What's the employee value proposition? And so a number of my clients have been working on that conundrum and saying, how can we make ourselves valuable to a potential employee? Oh, and by the way, it's not necessarily about money. Of course, money is important, but the ability to understand what's important to a potential employee in their lives. So they might be nest building. They might be, so income is really important. They might be raising a family, and therefore the flexibility to be able to work from home or not, as the case may be, becomes really, really important as part of that ability to attract the talent.
So flexibility as the employer has been the key word. You used the word adapt, but that also means changing your mindset around the relationship you're going to have. It strikes me that one of the lessons that some of my clients have seen in this particular subject is that the boot is now on the other foot. And if you want to retain talent, if you want to attract talent, you're the one who, as the employer, has got to do the work. You've got to make a convincing case to them that you are going to be able to meet their expectation fully and well. And that's been quite difficult for some of my clients, because we've had decades of not necessarily needing to do that, and the feeling that they should in some way give up this authority has been a challenge. The other aspect is it actually can cause some quite nasty, unexpected consequences with HR law, because you can't obviously discriminate between employees doing similar work. And so if you bring new people in on substantially different pay scales, that's a problem. If you bring them on significantly different terms and conditions, you can unlock a Pandora's box of problems that you really weren't intending.
Yes.
So what we found, and I think it mirrors exactly what you said, is the more creative, the more flexible, the more prepared to do something differently with employees is making progress. But you've got to see it as much through their lens as your own.
Absolutely. And another element to that, I would argue, is leaders have developed their careers up to this point, and quite often they have been looked up to, and the expectation has been that they are the ones who will guide and who will, dare I say, control the organisation. So we've got a body of people who have learnt how to lead from a relatively stable situation where the expectation is that they do exactly that.
Yeah.
Now we find that to be really effective in this uncertain world in which we now live is that we need a more agile and a more flexible, networked approach where leaders certainly give direction, but their traditional, if you will, command and control type attitudes and ways of operating are just not effective. And they aren't able to be sufficiently agile, there's that word again, to be able to cope with what is being thrown at them. But individually within networks, and we all know about social networks, the LinkedIn, the Facebook, etc., etc., etc. It's exactly the same in business. Those power of networks to be able to solve problems and deliver value to customers is absolutely critical, and it can't rely on the traditional top-down to flow and cascade of information necessarily.
And moving on the subject, perhaps towards the impact of Brexit, have any of your clients found Brexit a challenge or an opportunity?
More so a challenge just at the moment. Trying to encourage people to think of them in opportunity can take a bit of skill. So, for example, I've got one client whose cost base is increasingly being challenged, not least because some of their manufacturing facilities are in China. And so the transportation, logistics costs have gone through the roof. And what they're also finding is that their ability to apply price increases to their own products is limited contractually. And so they're certainly being squeezed. And the cost base generally is going up. Maybe not at the top of the organisation, but certainly in the middle and towards the bottom of the organisation. Right. How to convert? It's all right, Jed. They say we know that you want us to encourage and think about opportunities, but what part of increased costs and margins being squeezed do you not understand? So it is a bit of a challenge for us coaches to say, yeah, but it's an opportunity. Let's think about it. So you just have to temper it slightly.
Yeah, we personally had direct exposure to clients whose European markets have quite literally evaporated, either because the paperwork and logistics prohibits them physically moving goods, or because they're no longer able to service their customers, partly because of pandemic, partly because of the Brexit regulations. And I've seen a number of very innovative solutions to keep some form of show on the road. So one of the clients who brought a lot of product in from Spain is now bringing it directly from Morocco. So it's a ship from Morocco to the UK as opposed to a truck from Spain, where the paperwork is no different to what it was pre-Brexit because it's from Morocco. I've seen another client who sends about 25% of their production into mainland Europe, simply unable to get through the ports, particularly France, but not exclusively. And so they found innovative ways of getting their product into Germany and to Eastern Europe by moving the product into Sweden, and then from Sweden into Denmark and then down through into mainland. And so by finding new routes, which aren't cheap, they're not necessarily an economic decision here, but they've found routes of keeping customers satisfied. One of the really strange things is some of the regulations that were in place pre-Brexit, particularly for exporting to places like Russia, were on the basis of being a member of the EU. Now we're not a member of the EU. Any of that previous documentation is now unacceptable to the Russians, which I can understand. but we don't have in place replacement documents. So that market is closed unless you can move it to the product to Europe and then from Europe into the Russian Federation.
Yeah.
So there have been some very serious challenges from our clients following Brexit, but they are definitely being hit by it, but they are doing their best to mitigate or to find creative solutions. That's been my experience. Yeah. And we may well be, we'll talk about 2022 in another edition, but we may well be finding that later in months to come, the problem worsens before it gets better with new regulations coming. And so just finally, COP26, what do you think that's meant or is going to mean in the short term for many of us?
Well, I think, like anything, it's the reaction to the business community will follow a bell curve. Some people will be in the vanguard and see it as really important. And I could even link it back to one of the topics we've just been talking about, namely the acquisition of talent. So for some, it's going to mean being very clear about the values and the purpose of their organisation and the clarity with which they are able to explain how they are going to deal with COP26 in their own way, may well not only give dividends in terms of financial performance, but also enable them to acquire talent, because these issues are increasingly important to the talented labour pool that is coming into the market at the moment. I have to say, at other ends of the spectrum, people. I was in a workshop yesterday, and COP26. Now I'm very clear. I'm operating in this geographically very tight market, and at the moment I don't need to bother. Okay. But clearly that isn't a sustainable position in the medium term. But in the short term, they can probably get away with it. Longer term, though, over the next 5-10 years, increasingly, I think there are going to be financial implications from an accounting point of view, in the sense of trying to understand the liabilities associated with probably the larger organisations in the first instance. What those financial liabilities are as a consequence of having to offset their carbon exposure, and what that is going to do to their balance sheet, and hence their ability to raise finance. But that's probably further down the track than for most, but certainly that's going to have a substantial impact, at least initially, on the larger organisations.
Moving on perhaps to a more positive perspective, one of the strange things of 2021 is the amount of success I've seen with clients. And despite all of the challenges, a number of my clients have been, having record years. I can't put it any other way. And they seem almost embarrassed, if not nervous, about celebrating success. Are your clients good at celebrating success?
I can think of one particular one who celebrates, is currently celebrating by buying a property in Spain. That was his response to the, if you will, the windfall that came, because, as you say, some people have done really well. I think more often than not, leaders can be very driven individuals, as we know, and they just strive continually to the next goal, and it can be a bit of a challenge sometimes to go, hold on a minute, let's just reflect upon what it is that you've actually managed to achieve, especially in the light of the challenges that we've been talking about. So I'm working with a company at the moment, and a windfall is probably the best way to describe. They are in medical device distribution, and lo and behold, their results this past year have been phenomenal. And so the really nice challenge that they've got is to go, okay, then we don't want to go back to the run rate that we had before the windfall. So what are we going to do? And ask me on Friday, and I'll let you know what the outcome of their planning session is. But it's a really nice problem to have.
I've found it's very important for clients, particularly those that have slogged through 2021, that they've taken the time to thank their staff, celebrate with their staff, really recognise the successes that they have had, not just the windfalls, but we worked hard for this, we did meet the challenge, and we have done it, and to thank them. And again, this is a thank you, not a monetary benefit necessarily, though that's obviously part of it. It's a matter of actually getting people to feel appreciated for what has been, on every level, a difficult, very long year.
Yeah, and if this brings things back to where we started, we mentioned working from home, and one of the better examples of how people have coped with that is that leaders, managers have kept in very close contact. The well-managed, well-led organisations have very well contact with their colleagues, and now that we're sort of hopefully getting back to, in inverted commas, more normal working, that habit has continued.
Right.
So people are checking in more often, and people are able to say thank you very much informally, not waiting for the appraisals, the formal appraisal. Thank you very much, Graham. That was a great piece of work. The client was really appreciative, etc., etc. In an informal, just tell me how I'm doing, and that ability to check in on a regular basis is really powerful.
That leads me on to the next subject. I think in 2021 it's become totally acceptable to speak out loud about mental health, about well-being, and it's not seen as a sign of weakness or failure. And indeed, employers have embraced this and encouraged their staff to share their problems and see what can be done to help each other. What have you seen as best practice in your client base around these sorts of matters?
I think of one particular client in the professional service area where in the good old days, the way that people viewed success was to pretty much work all hours sent. And now, as a result of all the challenges that we've been talking about, they've actually realised that a balance of life, and work-life balance, oh no, not that again, but it's so true. The ability to turn off your screen and to not send emails to colleagues who then think that, I need to respond. And even Microsoft have got into the act. I don't know whether you've seen recently that Outlook sends a little message at the top of the screen saying, do think about it when you compose this email, whether you're going to send it. And so it's absolutely critical not to put pressure on colleagues. Right through to some organisations I know have pretty much thrown out not so much the rule book, but the traditional way of operating, but where they're saying, here are the objectives. So long as you achieve the objectives, how you do that and when you do that, it's entirely up to you. If you prefer to work at 3 o'clock in the morning, so long as the mental health is there, then fine. You can then take 2, 3, 4 months off. It's entirely up to you. But that is also a really interesting way of how the market seems to be moving. Certainly it's not relevant for everybody, but some people have been quite creative in saying, okay then, you so long as you deliver the objectives, then how you do it, it's entirely up to you. Clearly, as long as it's ethical and legal, all that kind of good stuff.
I think it's been interesting because it's so easy for working from home to turn into living at work. You've actually got to have this balance, and employers have got to respect it. And I think in my experience, it's been a learning curve. There's been a build-up of trust, people being out of sight, out of mind, and feeling if I can't watch them every day, I don't know they're doing what they're supposed to be doing or when they're supposed to be doing it. And there's been a situation where they've been employers have been feeling that they need to have some kind of technology solution to that, tracking people's on time and all this sort of stuff. And I think we've moved through that phase and we've come out the other end, and people are saying, you're a responsible individual, I trust you with my work, you get it done the way is best for you, provided it meets all the other criteria we have for our customers and the rest of the team. Yeah. And I think we have matured as a management population for that. The other aspect that I think is we are now beginning to see clients work out what the new regime is beginning to look like, and it isn't 100% at home. Yeah. There's got to be a social interaction. There's got to be part of an organisation. You've got to feel that you're in a team of some kind. You've got a relationship with them. You're not just isolated at home and it's all Zoom or email or whatever. And I think that maturity is coming, and I see signs of that. I have one particular client who had big savings and productivity gains in terms of people working from home and not losing time commuting and so on. But they started to lose the esprit de corps, they started to lose the spontaneous combustion of exchange of ideas. Yeah. And so they've moved back to, and I don't think hybrid's the right kind of word, they've moved back to a more blended situation where people want to and do go to the office, or in this context, a studio, and work together and collaborate and then go home, whatever. But the 9 to 5 of all of that's gone for all the chalk.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree.
So as we come to the end of 2021, what do you think are the big things for your clients going into 2022? What will they be thinking about other than Turkey, do you think?
I think that the principal challenge is this piece about how do we create and manage and develop this level of trust. You mentioned it a few moments ago, and it's absolutely critical. It's about how we lead this organisation, the element of trust that we have, hopefully with all employees and colleagues that we have in our organisations, but trying to challenge the existing way in which we have to check up on somebody. Are they here? I have a client who gets people to check in, check out, facial recognition software, this, that, and the other. Actually, so long as they are doing the job and the customers are ecstatic in the experience that they get, then does it matter? But the starting point, I think, and the thing that I continue to encourage people to think about is, you took somebody on implicitly trusting them. When they joined your organisation, you didn't hire somebody and say, well, I don't actually trust you, but I'm going to give you a job anyway. There was this implicit trust in the person to whom you've given the job. So let's continue with that level of trust and prove it, and treat people as adults. There's that phrase again. And that is a consistent conversation that I'm having with my clients about trusting people. And you know what? When people feel trusted, they're going to perform that much better.
They do. For me, one of the trends I'm beginning to see, and we're recording this session at a point where the Omicron variant is beginning to cast doubt and fear and uncertainty again, is as we go into 2022, the thought that COVID was going to be behind us, the thought that we were going to go back to some kind of normality, is probably dawning on people that, do you know what? 2022 could look awfully like 2021 with all sorts of uncertainties. And therefore, perhaps this is our new norm. Perhaps this is our new world. We're going to live in a world of greater uncertainty than we're used to. And as we've seen, and as we talked about earlier, the agile performers in our client bases, the adaptable people will thrive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, looking ahead, December the 25th, what does Christmas look like in Jed's house?
Carnage is the one word that I would use. We're just about to take delivery of an 8-week-old puppy.
Wow.
So anything is likely to happen. I hope it doesn't get the turkey. But you never know. So it will be carnage. and we're in the process of making the house as dog proof and as dog friendly as we can. But it will be interesting. Watch this
a lot of
space.
fun.
Absolutely.
So you're unwrapping the dog on Christmas Day. Is that the plan?
Yeah, oh yes. Well, what's left of the presents? They certainly won't be left under the tree, within chewing distance. We'll see what happens.
Jed, thanks very much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Love to see you.
And thank you for giving us and sharing your wisdom. Have a fabulous Christmas.
Thank you.
And we'll talk again in the new year.
I look forward to it, Graham. All the very best to you. Take care.
That's it, everybody. That's the end of this edition of the Coaching Conversation. And we'll see you in 2022. So, there you have it. The latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. Hope you found it interesting. Hope you found it useful. You can find out more about our coaching programs at theexecutivemindset.co.uk. If you want to reach out, you can send me an email at theexecutivemindset@sagegreen.com. You can book a free 30-minute session at theexecutivemindset.co.uk, which will give you a really good feel for how coaching could help you. And if you've really enjoyed the session, do please rate us, do please give us a review. And nothing more for me to say other than see you next time.